What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Becoming a Better Man podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jason Wright. And this week, it's one of those rare weeks, guys. I've got a special guest come on here to talk with us about, like his story. And he happens to be a good buddy of mine. And just regretfully, I've done a poor job keeping in touch over the last couple of years. You know how this crazy COVID stuff has thrown a wrench in friends keeping in touch. So we got a chance to catch up last night, and some really great discussion came up. And we just, we already had the podcast booked for today, and we figured, you know what, it'll be even better when we hit record in the morning. So here we are. My good friend DJ Haskins, he is a physical therapist as well, and he is the owner of his own mobile, and he also has a little spot now. So you need to see him in the office, you want to see him mobile. DJ Haskins, owner of Resolo PT here in Tampa. And man, DJ, thanks for wanting to come on the show.
Oh, bro, I'm hype about this because I was actually, I was listening to the podcast, and I know that you don't have a lot of guests on here, so I'm honored. I am honored, bro.
It's select few, man.
Exactly. I was like, I'm an elite company.
That's right. Exactly. Well, hey, man, some of what we've talked about, even just last night, but I know in the past, we had really met through kind of like a business coaching group, and we had the opportunity, I think, to really bond a couple of years ago in like a weekend retreat. And, a lot of stuff came up in those early morning walks, and I was like, man, this, that's kind of how you find out, like who are the people in your life that you just kind of connect with and can open up to them about stuff that maybe you're just not comfortable open up to most other guys about. And man, I wanted to give you a chance, or even just for my own self, to hear you talk a little bit about kind of what's been your experience like as you've gotten older, in terms of how you view manhood or your own manhood.
Hmm. That's tough. And I actually want to, so you brought up, the time that we had over there at the beach, those few days, it was super awesome. So we had this retreat, right? And it was just for us to collaborate and everybody to, kind of put their minds together and figure out where they wanted to go with their businesses. And, you and I actually had a couple of mornings where we just woke up. I don't know if it was like 5 or 6.
It was early.
We were up. It was early. We just go walk on the beach, and I think it's very interesting, like looking back, because that was, 2.5 years ago.
Mm.
And we're both completely different men than we were back then.
Mm-hmm.
And so to look back, and go, wow, like we were both very transparent, like even though we really didn't know each other like that well,
Mm-hmm.
we had just met that weekend, and it was just dope that we were able to be really open and transparent like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this actually ties into the question that you just asked, because it's something that I'm kind of actively like in encouraging with a lot of my guy friends, to like, hey guys, like let's just be open with each other. Like you don't have to play tough for me. Like, I'm your boy. Like let's talk about it. And it's the same thing with a lot of my clients and my patients, especially as men. It's just like we have this desire, this need that seems to have been imposed by society, which you've talked about before, to just be tough, to just move on to the next thing, to put it on the shoulders and just keep chugging. But I thought it was dope that you and I were able to connect like that and really just share some of the burdens we were carrying, right? And talk about like the experiences that we had in our family. And so I think that that's where, it's really, that's where things are looking for me, as far as when it comes to being a man and manhood, is like, it's not about being tough. It's not about just being a provider. It's not about, which all these things have been questioned for me, or like put under the spotlight recently.
Mm.
Like last year I was placed on furlough from my job that I had. And my wife was continuing to work, and every day I'm over here playing house husband. I'm cleaning, making sure that she has her coffee in the morning. It was a complete role reversal, or not even per se, because that's not really her role in our relationship. But it was very interesting because I had this kind of idea that I was a provider, and it was just like, okay, well, now you're not, because you don't have any money coming in. So then what, And it was like, wow, your value your value is more than just what you bring into the household as far as money and resources.
Yeah.
It's your energy, it's your emotion, it's your compassion, your kindness, your love, your willingness to listen, there's just so much more than what we typically see.
Yeah, I'm with you on that because it's interesting, and you can probably speak on this, more if you want to. But when, as a man, like when you're in a situation where you're not like providing like how you expect to of yourself, um, it's interesting the way that you find ways to see how else I can step up somewhere else.
Mm.
Like you mentioned it, stuff around the house. The cleaning, making sure coffee's ready, because it's almost like is it almost kind of like a feeling of guilt,
Mm.
that maybe you're not wanting her to be aware of, and so it's like how can I step up and go like above and beyond everywhere else, so that way I still feel like I'm contributing to this household.
Whew. A really good point. I've had a conversation with another friend about this too. Who works from home, and his wife was working a job that she didn't really enjoy. And we talked about that. The guilt of, man, she's going into work, and I'm here at home, like I'm doing what I love. But she's going into a job that she absolutely hates. And it was a similar sentiment of like, man, dude, like I just feel guilty. Like, I'm really happy to be doing what I'm doing, but I feel guilty. And I shortly after that found myself in a similar situation as I stepped away from my full-time job, and I started building a business, and I was really enjoying my days, networking, connecting with people, seeing private clients, one-on-one, just loving this. But my wife was still in a situation where it was like, I hate this job. I can't stand it, and I'm like, this is just terrible. Like, so it's very interesting, those emotions, and like how you automatically try to make yourself feel better by being productive in that sense, like you were saying.
Mm.
And so, yeah, that's a good point that you make, actually.
Yeah. Well, it's there's something that and guys, I mean, if you don't know DJ personally, I'll tell you like something that I've always admired about you, man, is your relationship and your devotion to your wife, and how that's been able to still be apparent, even just like from the outside, like from the 30,000 foot view, even after how long you guys have been together, and we talked about it a little bit last night, like just the different stages of growth that you're at in the different ages, as you grow together. And that's how much do you attribute her and her influence and just even her presence in your life to your growth?
Hmm. Man, dude. Ooh, that's a layered question right there, man. So it's actually very interesting. You make me think of two different things. So there's no doubt about it that my wife, as a lot of the guys probably listening to this podcast, and people have different experiences. Some people are like, man, my wife has been the absolute best thing that's ever happened to me. Helped me really develop into the man that I am, helped me become a more aware person, much more driven, much more compassionate is probably the biggest thing that my wife has helped me with. I was not the kindest person or very loving and understanding. She's helped me with that.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because on the opposite side of the spectrum, unfortunately, a lot of guys have been hit with, man, dude, she's made my life an absolute terror, and it's just been miserable. And that's really unfortunate. But like you and I talked about last night, a lot of it comes down to ourselves, and controlling what we can control. We can't control another individual in a way that's, not just manipulation,
Right.
and abusing them. And so it's interesting because a lot of the things over the years for my wife and I on both sides of it was once we addressed the issues in ourselves, or we changed our individual behavior, it begot the behavior or the desired outcome in the other person.
Mhm.
For instance, um, for me, one of the things that that kind of got me early on, my wife will 100% agree with this. I'm not throwing her right. Is I'm very particular about organization and cleaning and all the sorts. And so, I mean, we're here on Zoom right now recording this, but you can literally see stacks of towels in the background that I just folded right before we hopped on here, and I didn't get a chance to put them away yet, right? But
Yeah.
it's interesting because my wife, that wasn't quite the case for her, and so I would get frustrated, like, come on, like, can you help me clean, can you organize this, like, blah blah blah. And this is really something simple, it's not on a deep level, but one of those surface things that does become a problem for a lot of couples,
Mhm.
and it was the case for us. And I was just like, man, like, I read some book and it was talking about ownership. I think it was Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink,
Yeah.
which, if you haven't read, that's probably in my top 5 books all time. Like, that book
Amazing.
was a game changer.
Yeah.
And so I just was like, man, listen, like, let me do my part. I'll just, I'll fold the clothes, I'll put them away, I'll be that example almost.
Mhm.
And it took some time. Like, it doesn't happen overnight. But now my wife is much better about it, and so it's just awesome to see that. But you did make me think of something, Jason, actually, which, you talked about our relationship and that dedication, which is something that uh, a lot of people think just happens,
Mm.
but don't really recognize that a lot of it is mindful intention, you
Mhm.
know. And so for a lot of you guys, that are listening, it's not, don't go just admire someone else's relationship and wish that it was yours, because 99% of them aren't just happily in love and everything was just perfect,
Mhm.
especially in our generation, young adults, young men, 20s and 30s and all the sorts. It's like, it's very hard to find that example of equality, a marriage relationship where both parties are just equally happy, and enjoying and thriving in this relationship. And there's so much intention, like, in our relationship, to make sure that we're checking in with each other, right? To make sure we're checking in with each other, to make sure we're on the same page emotionally, to make sure we give each other the time to listen to how our days went, to caring for each other's family and all the sorts. And I'll tell you this. So you and I both are physical therapists, Jason. And one of the things that actually really helped me leading up to us getting married was I was on a clinical rotation. We were engaged. I think let's see, this was in March probably. So we had about 6 months until we were going to get married.
Mhm.
And my wife and I dated for 10 years before we got married. Okay.
Wow.
So from high school all the way through grad school, we dated. And very obvious for a lot of people, like, oh, you guys are definitely going to get married, but it's not okay. Like, time shouldn't be the reason that you guys get married just because you've been together so long.
Ooh.
And I felt that pressure. I felt that pressure, especially being high school sweethearts.
Mhm.
I'm sure my wife felt that pressure. I don't know if we ever really talked about that, her and I, but I definitely felt that. And one of the things that helped me to go, do I really love my wife, and am I willing to be, like, married to her for the rest of my life? And am I dedicated, and willing to go through all the trials that we're going to face and, like, still be with her,
Yeah.
And one of the things that really helped me was, I was in the hospital, on a clinical assignment, a clinical rotation, and I was on the neuro unit. So I'm seeing people, gunshot wounds to the head, strokes, different cancers that were, in the brain, tumors that were creating dysfunction, different sorts. And I would see these couples, some in their 30s, some in their 40s, some in their 80s. I would see these couples and the partner just sitting by the bedside.
Mhm.
And I would ask myself, like, if this was Gabby,
Mm.
like, in the bed, the patient here, like, if this happened, like, not in her 80s, because yeah, we can say, oh yeah, I'd be willing to do that then. But it's like, if
Right.
this happened, like, in our 20s, in our 30s, am I willing to be that person for her, to be there for her, even if she can't give me what I need? Give
Mhm.
me what I need in this place. And I would watch these couples, the person's just unconscious, like, they've been in a coma for multiple days, and this partner is just there by their side.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, could I do that? And it was a really hard question to ask myself, and even harder to answer, right? Like, to be able to without a doubt say yes took me a long time to get to. And a lot of people would be like, oh well, you're heartless, or that's no. But the point is, like, the stuff that we've gone through in our first 4 years of marriage, I
Yeah.
doubt that we would have overcome those if either of us hadn't, questioned that. It was like, hey, am I willing to be dedicated through all of this?
Mhm.
And so there was just so much intention about, making sure that we don't allow any of these things to come in between us or separate us, and to stay dedicated to one another.
Yeah, man. No, you made such great points using those examples from observing patient situations, because I started thinking about, like, maybe I've never seen it that way, but I've viewed relationships the same way. Like, I've paid very close attention, obviously, to my patient, but more so the relationship that they had with their spouse,
Mm.
and it was just really, like, kind of uplifting and scary at the same time to just see these people who, like, I think of this one guy in particular, like, he had like really bad like lumbar stenosis, and he was starting to get central cord compression and loss of function in his bowel, bladder, legs, like red flag stuff. Got the surgery, and he was practically paralyzed from the waist down until all the swelling could go down. And he spent 5 months in the rehab facility where I was at the time on his contract, and it was just crazy to, like, his wife was there like every single day, and it just kind of made me and I've seen it the other way around, husbands doing that for their wives, and it makes you really go, I think this is an important question, and I'm glad that you guys asked this of yourselves, because when you're with somebody for a long time, it's easy to just think it's the next thing that you're supposed to do, or who else do I want to have to invest this much time into somebody else if this doesn't work out, or if they're not the one, do I want to start over? That maybe it's just easier to stay put,
Mm.
and they'll, I think, fall more in love with the idea of being in love than the actual, like, dirty work, because it's the hard moments that you are really going to show your dedication. It's not the easy, but the easy is always the feel good stuff. And I think, like, you made a good point. Today's age, dating, relationships, marriages, even, like, there's a massive threat out there. And I tell you what, man, like, and I know you probably feel the same way, because we kind of talked about our views on social media last night. Man, if I didn't have social media, or like if I didn't have a business, I wouldn't be on social media. Like, I don't want to mess with it. And I don't even know, like, how comfortable I'd be with meeting somebody or being with somebody that was, like, obsessed with it. Because, like, you get in, like, one bad day, you have one bad week with each other where you're just kind of like, always kind of nipping at each other. And then next thing you know, like, they're there on their phone, somebody's giving them attention. And
Mm.
then next thing you know, like, their mind is elsewhere with somebody else. And it's easy to get that way out of the hard times, because you can distract yourself with even some stranger practically that's going to give you attention by liking your stuff, or trying to slide in your DMs. And it's just like, it's crazy the level of commitment that people, I think, underestimate um, going into a marriage, or even just a long-term relationship. It's, you got to be able to ask yourself those questions. Am I really capable of loving this person the way that they need?
Mm.
And are they capable of reciprocating?
Mm.
And I'm just, you guys inspire me, and I know, like, no relationship is perfect, and so I don't want you to think I'm putting pressure on you guys as the perfect couple. But I know that it's been a lot that you guys have had to go through. Um, Kind of just to switch gears a little bit here, what what impact do you think? Because I mean, your biological parents weren't together in the same home as you grew up, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as somebody that can relate to that, and I know a lot of the guys out there do as well, how much of a factor do you think witnessing that growing up impacted your ability to have your views set upon marriage and relationships?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked this actually, bro, because I know there's a lot of guys that experience this. I have friends whose they did grow up with their parents married, but they split. Their parents divorced, and as they were adult men, in college, their parents, while my friend was in college, multiple friends, their parents got a divorce,
Mm.
or even maybe a little bit earlier in high school, and they even said, no, I'm not going to get married. It's not worth it. Like, my parents were married. I thought they were happy, and then they split. It's like, why would I want to deal with that?
Yeah.
Completely understandable. Nobody wants to willingly subject themselves to heartbreak. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
you might be a little crazy if you willingly want to do that, right? And so it's interesting in the same sense. It's like I tell a lot of people that, your family's history doesn't have to be your reality,
Mm.
right? Your family's history doesn't have to be your reality.
Ooh.
I mean, the truth of it is, it makes it more likely that it could be your reality,
Mhm.
but there's still choice. There's still choice. And that's where I stand with that, as far as my life is concerned, because my dad wasn't around early on in my life. He had moved out of state, kind of gotten his life back together, which I'm very grateful for at this point in my life, because I wouldn't be talking to you right now if my dad hadn't gotten himself back on track and become a better man.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I was able to eventually, as a early teen, go and live with him. And that changed the trajectory of my life, which I'm eternally grateful for. But early on in my life, the real pivotal years, where you're very impressionable, and a lot of these habits and a lot of these tendencies start to develop, or, where we tend to experience a lot of the traumas that manifest themselves as our behaviors today.
Yep.
It's very interesting, because growing up, I there's I occasionally reflect back and I really go, am I lying to myself? But every time I do this, I realize there wasn't a single married couple in my neighborhood, in the family, in the circles that my mom, was in. There were no married couples. There were people that were in relationships, but it was mostly a domestic relationship with like a codependency for being able to survive, to
Yep.
just to make ends meet.
Yep.
And it was nothing that you would ever admire as like oh yeah, like I want to spend the rest of my life with that person.
Yeah.
And so it was really hard, because when I got to when we were in college, after we had dated a couple of years, my then girlfriend and I, now my wife, after we dated a couple of years, the topic of marriage came up, and I pushed it away. And I said, like,
Mhm.
because I was terrified. It was like, I don't want to ruin what we have,
Amen.
and I also didn't know what marriage looked like. It was like, yeah, no, like,
Yep.
I don't know anybody that's married and happy. Like,
Yeah.
and it was just like, oh yeah, I don't know if I want to do this. And so it took me a long time to do the work personally,
Mhm.
and to really go, okay, in a similar sense, like, am I willing to commit to this? And it was also a point where I said, okay, my pretty much no one in my family was married,
Yeah.
or at least the one that was, it wasn't anything that I really admired, where I would go, I really want a marriage like that. And so I hadn't seen that until like late high school, with one of my friends' families. Their parents were married, and it was like, wow, like they have an awesome relationship. But in my head, it went, oh, they're the exception, you know.
Mhm.
And so it took me a really long time to get to the place where I was willing to get married, and know that I'm dedicating myself to this person for the rest of my life. And so it's hard. It's understandable, to any of the guys listening to this, like, you're not alone. If you have your concerns or doubts because of your family's history, it's completely understandable. And I just encourage you to do the hard work, ask yourself the hard questions, have the hard conversations now. And the more you talk about this stuff, the easier it gets.
Yeah.
It's really hard at first. You think you're going to be judged. You think that person's gonna not love you. You think that you're not worthy, of
Mhm.
that person, and you sometimes might push them away because, well, you think things are going too good and you're not used to having that in a relationship.
Mhm.
There's so many things that happen, But do the hard work. Ask yourself the tough questions, and a lot of times it starts with you,
Yeah.
you know. And so I just encourage you,
No.
just start there and have.
Yeah, no, that's great because you know, and I think I've touched on this before, like in other episodes. It's easy to point the finger, right? Like it's easy to look at your partner or look at your family or somebody else that's close to you, and make them, you know, the opponent, right?
Mm,
Like they're the enemy because they're the ones that are hurting you right now. And man, a lot of times, you know, you touched on it a little bit. There's like you were already like you're already kind of hurt,
mm,
right? It's just whether you're aware of it or not. And then it's usually those people that mean the most to us that kind of bring it to the surface after the fact, because it happens young, like it happens early, and a lot of us might even look back and go, I never really went through anything traumatic, you know, like I was never abused, I was never, you know, a victim of something. But it doesn't always look the same way for people. Like if you've been let down at a young age, like you've been traumatized, like you've been wounded,
mm.
and you know, expectations weren't met and needs weren't met in some way. So it affects us as guys. Um, did you ever? I already know the answer to this, but did you feel like maybe not wanting to look at that stuff for a long time manifested itself in how you carried yourself? Like, were there anger issues? Were you kind of closed off? Like, what was it?
Yeah. So I think as I started to, so a lot of my, I'll be honest, a lot of my life was kind of always trying to be different from everything that I ever saw growing up
Mhm.
and different from all the people in my family. Or I'll say my immediate family and the immediate influences around me, because my family wasn't around a lot as a child. It was more so neighborhood influence of men that I wouldn't have as a role model for my child today if I had one,
Mhm. Yeah.
and so I definitely avoided very uncomfortable conversations and topics, and I knew that I had a tendency towards anger, actually, which was kind of inherited from my father's side of the family. Is there a lot of my family there is really, quick to anger. And so it was a conscious effort of like, how do I make sure that this doesn't impact, my relationship? And it's interesting, actually. I think I might be straying away here from your question, but it's interesting because you and I talked last night about that, how even years after I've been working on this, 10 plus years, that it's like, listen, like no one will, in my head, I've said, no one will ever know angry DJ, right? You
Mhm.
will not know me as an angry person. And to this day, there's very few people that are like still around in my life that,
Yeah.
know the person that, would have been hot headed from back then, right? If you get me into like a game night or something, or you get me real competitive right now, like, yeah, I'm gonna yell. I'm probably gonna get really like up there in your face and everything, but like, it's not anger, right? It's
Yeah.
passion, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
And so,
Same.
but the anger side of things, it's like, it's really crazy. You and I talked about this, and you could probably touch on, the element for you where it's, even years after working on this, something happens and it's like, man, I feel like I'm about to get angry about this. Like,
Mhm.
why am I feeling this? I thought I had kind of buried this,
Mhm.
and so it's a really conscious effort to keep that thing buried. And it's like constant work. And I think for a long time, I thought it was something, and for some people it probably can. I thought it was something that could be fixed,
Yeah.
you know. But we know they've done studies, on the brains of people that have had addictions, and it shows that even years later, the neural pathway that makes them more likely to use, whatever substance it is that they use, it makes them more likely still. Even decades later, that neural pathway is still there if they haven't used. And so it's like, well, am I immune from that
Right.
for anger issues? Like, probably not. And it's probably better if I stay on the defensive and I'm, or not even defensive, but offense, and actively attacking
Yeah.
this issue week in and week out. And so it's definitely a tough battle, but if you want to share a little bit about, that side of things for you.
Yeah, no,
You had
it's
an analogy to it last night, actually.
yeah, well, it's I would I'd say it's been the same, because it's kind of like it's like we're hardwired after that stuff happens, and we're like we've been programmed, and then um, all this stuff, starts to come up, it triggers it, something feels familiar, and that's just kind of like automatically you're kind of hitting that factory reset button, and you're feeling yourself going back to where you were before and just backtracking, and
Mm,
then it's really frustrating because like then I'm no longer mad about what's going on right now. Like what I'm mad about is how I've let myself down,
mm,
and how like I'm letting this person down because I thought I had a better handle on it. In my mind, the better handle is I've destroyed that version of me forever.
mm,
And it's like it's just not possible. And the more I think about it, it's better for us to acknowledge that dark side that's there, because then it doesn't have that kind of power over us.
mm,
Like it's not like it's something that we're afraid of and have to keep trying to run or hide from it, or hide it from everybody else. um, it's more of, yeah, this is a part of kind of what shaped me, and I used it to protect myself early on, and then at some point it got to where it's going to hinder my growth, and it's
mm,
going to hinder my ability to really get close to other people and have the life that I say that I'm wanting, and really want to try to work towards. So you can't get rid of the darkness without shining some light on it.
mm,
And if you don't if you don't address it, if you're not willing to look at it, then you're going to be really surprised and really frustrated when it does start to creep back over you, because it's never ending. Like it's ongoing. You have to keep putting in the reps, just like in the gym, right? Like you have to keep putting in the reps or else the muscle atrophies.
mm,
And the same thing goes with the strength that we try to develop to become better version of ourselves.
mm,
If not, like it's so much easier just to go back to not trying and just acting however we want to act, and feeling whatever we want to feel, or reacting instead of responding. And it's hard, but yeah, I'm with you on this, that it's frustrating when
mm,
it happens, and it pisses you off, right? Because like I thought I was better than this. I thought I had a handle on it, and um, I think sometimes just having that acceptance of yourself, of who you are, makes it a lot easier to make those changes long term.
mm,
Instead of saying that I'm not this person, you say, I am this person and it's part of me. And I'm going to focus more on understanding what triggers that side to try to come out,
mm,
because then I can better in the moment have that conversation with myself and go, all right, is this about this? Or is this about her? Or is
mm,
this about this person? Or is it about the past? And really being able to do that makes it a lot easier to manage. It doesn't make it an easy process, but it simplifies it to where I think the worst thing, like with that, and even with us as PTs, right, like with injuries, what's the biggest thing that scares our patients and our clients? It's the unknown.
mm,
It's the unknown of, how bad is this really? Is it going to keep getting worse? Am I always going to be this way?
mm,
I think those are probably the main things that hold people back from wanting to even contact us in the first place,
mm,
because they're thinking like, what's the point? And then two, am I going to be able to do anything about it? And so I think the same things applicable to our emotional and mindset type of struggles that we have, because when you have that relapse, I guess you can put it that way, if you're using like the addict theme, when you
mm,
have that kind of relapse, the scariest thing in my experience has been, shit, have I not done anything? Like do I have to start over now?
mm,
Or um, am I ever going to be able to control this? And I think those are the biggest fears. And being able to just continually put in the reps and understand, like, either I have to separate myself from the people or the environments or whatever that are going to trigger that, because I know myself enough to know that, like, I can't push them back.
Mm.
So I've got to get away. That's the one option we have to consider. Or the second one, if it's something we maybe aren't as threatened by and know that we can have some sort of control over ourselves, know that, like, okay, when this comes up, this is what I need to do.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I'm not sure what your thoughts are on any of that.
No, that's really I mean, you hit it right there on the nose. And I think the important thing for, a lot of guys to know is it's a process,
Yep.
I mean, you and I, because I know that you've been on this journey for years now.
Mm,
And it's, we're not even the best version of ourselves yet.
right.
We're still becoming better men years into this journey. So for anyone who's just finding your podcast, or that have been listening to it for a few months, give yourself a little bit of grace. Like, you're not
Yep.
going to be the most perfect poly yourself or the best that you could possibly be in just a short few months. We're doing this process is us undoing years and years of behavior patterns,
Mm,
of overcoming trauma that's 20 plus years old maybe for some of us. And so it's a journey, and I think that's what I've really appreciated is I'm not there yet, and I'm just going to keep trying each day, each week, to just become a slightly better version of myself.
hmm.
And probably the hard part for a lot of people is just uncomfortable, really uncomfortable. And the hard part is getting comfortable being uncomfortable,
Yep. Yep.
and that's probably been the hardest thing for me, because growing up, all I saw was people that were complacent,
Mm,
that really just in the same spot on the same porch doing the same thing. And it's easy. That's easy.
hmm.
While it has its hardships or its frustrations, honestly, it's easier than embarking on the journey that a lot of the guys listening to this podcast are on.
Yeah.
Hard is you just got to get comfortable being uncomfortable, and just know that don't really look for an end date on this journey. Just know that take a little steps each day, each week. You'll have some periods where, hey, maybe you don't listen to audiobooks or podcasts as much, but keep coming back to it. Sometimes you need a little break, but sometimes you just got to dive in there and consume it and go at it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I wanted to call it "Becoming a Better Man" instead of "How to Become a Better Man,"
Mm,
because I think that that other one gives you the false sense of a finish line. It doesn't happen. Like, it's a becoming process and it's
mm,
ongoing. And I think a lot of times, yeah, we could take the easy route, but I think that gives you the harder life.
mm,
Like, that gives you the life where you're not fulfilled, and where you're miserable and you're angry at the world and you're
mm,
angry at everybody else. And once you start to take ownership of your situation and look in the mirror and go, in what ways am I holding myself back? I think that's when things start to change. Let me ask you this, as we kind of get closer to wrapping things up here pretty soon. When it comes to accelerators of your growth, do you think it's more apparent that it's due to your relationship with your wife, or what you had to face in becoming a business owner?
tough question.
Because I think those two things are, in my experience, the two main things that have forced me to be aware of my weaknesses more than anything else.
Hmm. I would say it's I would say it's multifactorial for me.
Mhm.
And I think it'll be the case for a lot of people. I feel like if there's I feel like if there's one thing that sometimes it might not be incentive enough to become like a different person. For a lot of people, it's okay, hey, my family, I have a sick family member, my mother or my father, I have to do better, I have to be better. or I have a child that's coming into the world. Like I have to be better. Those are catalysts for a lot of people to really do that. I would say it's really twofold for me, which we kind of talked on, is I would say the business side of things happened for me because of my childhood and the things that the things that I saw and the things that I don't want my children to experience.
Hmm.
So I think that came from more of my childhood as far as business things were concerned for me.
Yeah.
But when it comes to me as an individual, my family history and also my wife, in the sense of not that she forced me to change, but me desiring to be a better husband, a better partner, a better friend
Yeah.
um, to her. Those two things were probably the biggest catalyst for me. It was just if I was the person who I would have tended to be without effort, I wouldn't be in the relationship that I'm in,
Mm.
and I probably never would have made it through college, grad school, to being a business owner now. There's just there's no way. I confidently say that. Like if I was still who I was, and interesting that you actually did bring up environmental factors
Mm.
and social influences like the people that you hang out with,
Yeah.
the environment that you're in, the job that you're at, the places where you tend to spend the most time. Those are big factors that I don't think a lot of people account for.
Yeah.
And I think those are things for other people to watch out for that might keep them from becoming that person that they want to be.
Mm.
But that catalyst and accelerator for us on what's going to really incentivize us and motivate us to become a better man, or on this journey of becoming a better man, is going to be different for everybody. And it's okay if you're not 100% sure yet what that is for you. But start that journey, and who knows, like that situation may present for becoming a better man.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's something, when it comes to, just like you said, if even if you don't know, right, like that's okay. If you don't really know how to become a better man yet, like that's okay. Not to beat yourself up, but just having the desire to want to try and improve somewhere, to be able to have that honest conversation with yourself and go, hey, like I feel like I need to do better. Like I feel like this, whatever this is right now, is it what I want to keep going? Whether it be breaking those generational cycles, or how am I committed and showing up in my relationship? How do I approach obstacles and challenges? Giving back, am I just living about me, or am I living about others as well? And am I dedicated enough to growing myself year in and year out? um it's what I had this mental note to myself to ask you today, and we already touched on it, so I didn't. But I was like, is it nature or is it nurture, or is it a combination of both? Because I think it's easy for us to say it's one or the other, and it's not. Like it's everything. And don't be surprised if you're trying to get well in an environment that made you sick, and you're wondering why you're not getting well.
Mhm.
Like you can't get well in the same environment that made you sick.
Mhm.
And sometimes it only you can know that, right? Like only you as a man can know, am I just trying to, like, spin my wheels
Mhm.
here because it's just not possible? And I think a lot of that has to do with who you choose to spend your time with, especially on the friendship level. Family's always going to be family, but you can't change that. Like, but talking about breaking generational cycles, like you can't choose your parents, but you can choose your kids' parents.
Mhm.
And so take that into consideration, like when you're looking for a partner,
Mhm.
or the marriage that you want to build, and like not have, build.
Mhm.
And understand that, like, they're going to learn from you just like you learned from yours, just like they learned from theirs. And um, it's something that we've got to have honest conversations with ourselves. If we can't be honest with ourselves, we can't be honest with anybody.
Mhm.
and then we're living a lie. And um, there's a lot more to life than just trying to make impressions on
Mhm.
people and try to give off the appearance of happiness or success or whatever. And it takes hard work, and it takes honest conversations with ourselves and the people that are the closest to us to try and figure out, like, are we going on the right track or are we not? And it's okay to not be sure what that looks like yet, but
Mm.
having that willingness to do it. A while back, was trying to give some advice on a podcast episode, and even in that group that I started last year with that little like 21-day breakthrough thing. Um, talking about the importance of how it's easier to kind of stay on a good path once you understand where you're wanting to go.
Mm.
And if you don't understand where you want to go, like, that's okay. But I think the more, and let me know if I'm off base here, but I think the more that you get to know yourself and the more you are willing to spend time with yourself, eventually that path becomes clearer, right? Like, that destination that you want to go in comes clearer, and you're
Mm.
not putting all this pressure on yourself to be somebody that maybe you're just not meant to be.
Mm. Mm. It's really interesting. You make me think about what you just said, and then talking about how this journey is a little bit, not even a little bit, pretty challenging. Some tough days. Like,
Yeah.
and it actually makes me think about an experience my wife and I had during, our first. It was after our first year of marriage. We took a vacation. Oddly enough, we could probably do a whole nother podcast about financial headaches and the issues there and tendencies with family history and stuff. But we took a vacation all put on credit card
Yep.
and when we had no money basically because of some things that we had gone through. My wife had been unable to work for quite a few months and everything.
Hmm.
We went to Hawaii, and after going on that trip, somebody asked me, like, would I recommend them going to Hawaii? And it was an older person, and I told them, like, yeah, like, it's nice, but honestly, what I told them was, if you can't really go on the hikes in Hawaii,
Hmm.
it's not really worth it. It's honestly not that different. Like, the beaches are beaches,
Yep.
like, you can get them anywhere. You can go somewhere a lot cheaper, fly for half the amount of time. And what that correlates to here is the beach is readily accessible to hundreds of thousands, millions of people there. It's easy. There's sidewalks, there's boardwalks, there's the sand. They have wheelchairs that roll on the sand, right?
Yeah.
That can get you to the water if you needed to.
Yep.
And it's really easy to get there, and the reward is awesome. If you've never seen the beach before, if you've never seen the ocean like that, it's absolutely beautiful. But the real beauty, in Hawaii, honestly, for me, and the real beauty in life was taking the hard on these hikes, that you're just drenched in sweat. There's like these uphill climbs. You're just like, whoa, like, we're so high up, and it was not easy to get here. You're all muddied up from, the mud on the journey, the rocks and everything.
Yeah.
And the views from up there were just like spectacular, like breathtaking, way more than, honestly, for me, just standing on the beach. And so
Mm.
it's kind of that comparison of taking the easy road. Like, you can still have like a beautiful life, you can still have an awesome life a lot of times, and things that you're grateful for, but taking that hard road, just the rewards at the end, and not even at the end, because you got to come back down from
Yeah.
from that top point. But
Yeah.
the rewards on that journey and on that hike are just astronomical in comparison for me.
Mm. Mm. No, that's a great man. That's a great comparison. One last thing I want to get into before we wrap things up, like, since you're also a PT, you're also very passionate about fitness, not only for yourself but for your clients and things like that. As you've embarked upon this journey of your own growth, your own development, and things like that, and I know you touched on a little bit earlier how you kind of bring these things up with your clients, with your guys. Um, what how hand in hand do you see fitness and the way that we take care of our bodies and how it reflects upon how we view ourselves as people and our relationship with ourselves and our growth.
Yeah, it's very very connected, honestly. Like, I mean, we've all been there where, man, like I'm just feeling really motivated. I'm feeling on cloud nine. Everything's going great in my life. And well, I've been active in the gym. I'm staying consistent with this nutrition program and all the sorts. And then, man, one little thing happens, and it just derails you. Like I've been there. Like that was me 2 months ago. I was in that situation where it's just like, man, we just had this going on with the family. Like, my wife and I got into this disagreement, and,
Hmm.
business, this past week didn't go the way I needed it to go.
Yep.
And well, guess what? One of the first things is that, falls by the wayside. Well, my health and my fitness, unfortunately.
Yep.
And it's kind of one of those things, like we've kind of talked about, is it's a muscle that you got to kind of develop, where it becomes a behavior that's more out of habit, because, and that's what's going to keep you consistent. It's a habit. It's a normal part of your routine, like brushing your teeth, like eating food, right, to make it
Yep.
through the day. Like
Yep.
it's something that just becomes consistent for you, when you kind of start to, I don't want to say dissociate it from your emotions, but it's more so as you just get better at flexing that muscle, um, it tends to get a little bit easier. But again, I don't think any of us are prone, or we're not immune from having those slip ups. And I think it's okay, because a lot of us guys probably beat ourselves up more than we need
Mm.
to just give yourself a little bit of grace. And something that I recently implemented was the 2-day rule, which is something that I learned from Matt Diavola, who's one of the very of two like YouTubers that I follow.
Yeah.
Um, Guy who's really around like minimalism and just mindfulness and sorts. And he talks about this 2-day rule, where basically you give yourself 2 days. Like you don't go longer than 2 days without working towards something that you're trying to achieve. So whether that's business, whether that's, a better quality relationship, whether that's your finances being in a better place, or like we were just talking about, your health and fitness, it's don't go more than 2 days, no more than 2 days without working on that. So that happened last week to me. I didn't work out Saturday and Sunday because my wife and I were traveling. Monday, I had clients all day. It was 8 o'clock, and I said, if I don't work out tonight, like I'm breaking the 2-day rule. So I literally went on a run, because it was the only thing I had access to at that point. I went on a 2-mile run, and I can't tell you the last time I went on a jog.
Yeah.
So having kind of things in place like that will help with that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do you feel like, once you kind of get in that rut a little bit, like life happens, schedule happens, whatever it is, and you get out of it, and you're getting towards the end of that second day, and then you do something like what you did. You forced yourself to kind of go out on that jog. Um, is it one of those where like you were just kind of sitting there like, all right, 2 days, I'm so pumped about this jog, like I can't wait to go do it later. It's gonna be the best thing. I've been looking forward to this for the last 2 or 3 days. Or was it more like, oh my God, like I don't want to do this, but I can't, like I've made a promise to myself. And then how'd you feel afterwards?
Exactly. Yeah. No, the dichotomy between those two feelings in a 17-minute span of time was like insane. I literally got out of the car with my wife, and I had on athletic clothes. Thankfully, like I had on clothes that I was like, okay, I can go running in this. Got out of the car with her, and I was like, crap, it's gonna be like 2 days. Like, I was really hoping to go upstairs, like eat dinner with my wife, and then go to sleep. And I literally was like, Gabby, I gotta go. I gotta go on a run, like really quick. And she was like, what? Like, you're gonna go running? And I was like, yes, like, don't, like, I don't want to hear it. Like, I don't want to do this, but I have to.
Are
Like,
you okay?
literally. And so I did that. 5 miles in 17 minutes. And like, oh, I feel so good. Like, wow, it's just, yeah, insane the difference there, but didn't want to do it.
Yeah. Man, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I remember you posting about it too, that you brought it up. I was like, oh yeah, he did say something about that. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, hey, I know we're getting close to time here, and I want to give people always just kind of like a wrap up, thing. Like, so improvising here, if you had to, like, even go back like 3 years, what advice would you give to yourself 3 years ago, DJ, that today's DJ knows?
Mm. You know, I'd say find people that are either going or are where you want to be. Whether that is, you know, what we've been talking about with relationships, or whether that's career success, or that's physical fitness. Um, you know, it's as sad as it is, you're more likely to mimic the behavior of people that you're surrounded by. So if everybody around you is doing drugs, you're more likely to do drugs. Like
Yep.
if everyone around you is fit and healthy, you're more likely to pick up some of those habits, you know? So force your way into wherever you need to be surrounded by those things.
Mm.
And then do the hard work, you know, pick up a book. I hated reading
Yep.
until I discovered personal development and character development, you know. Listen to a podcast, listen to an audiobook. If you don't like reading, I still listen to more audiobooks than I read physical books.
Hmm.
Um, Pick up a book, listen to this podcast. There's, you know, there's an abundance of them that you can listen to, and tons of books out there that will get, you know, that'll hit you where you need to hear it. Um, Pick up a book, listen to a podcast, get the right people around you, and go crush it, man, and become a better man.
Ooh, ooh, yeah. On that note, man, there's nothing more that needs to be said. Man, DJ, thanks for so much for coming on the podcast and for being willing to talk about things that, you know, a lot of guys are just real hesitant to talk about, because for some reason it's like, if I admit that I'm not strong, then I'm weak,
Mm.
and that's not true. In fact, I think, and I know you agree with me, I think it takes more strength to admit that you're not feeling as strong as you wish you were, to be able to put that out there and to have those. You've done a great thing with your guy friends, you know, having that openness to be like, look, man, if you're not good, like, tell me, you know, if you need something, tell me. And you know, don't feel like because we're boys that you can't kind of break down that wall, because otherwise we stay stuck. So man, I appreciate you, and appreciate your friendship, and you know, just hopefully, and I know probably just guys listening to this are going to be inspired by what you've had to say, and it's going to help point some things out for them as well. So I appreciate you coming on, man.
Oh, likewise. Thanks for having me, my man.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, well, thank y'all for tuning in, and until next week, let's try and be better men every day.